Moving right along now, this is Investigative Judgment and Dismantled Part 2. And in this video, I will be dealing with William Miller's failed prophetic chart. When you look at Miller's chart, you will notice at the top where it says 2,520 years and the number under it 677. In order to understand these numbers, let me show you where they come from or how he arrives at these numbers. First, I'll deal with the 2,520 years. Miller arrives at this figure of 2,520 years from Leviticus 26:27. And there it says, I will be hostile toward you, and I myself will punish you for your sins 7 times over. You'll find a similar wording in verse 24. Then for some reason, and it's surely not found in this text I read, Miller turns this 7 to years. In other words, he's got years here now. But anyway, notice that the text says 7 times and not 7 years. Anyways, he goes on, well, there's 12 months to a year for 7 years. So you have 12 months times 7, and you come up with 84 months. Then Miller says that there are 30 days to a month. So he multiplies 84 times 30, and he comes up with the 2,520 years. Now, if you'll notice there, that had nothing to do with the return of Jesus Christ whatsoever. That had to do with Israel being punished for their disobedience to God. If anything, it should have said God was going to punish Israel for 2,520 years. And again, it did not relate to the second coming of Jesus Christ whatsoever. But anyway, like Daniel 8:14, Miller did not have a starting date for the 2,520 years. He couldn't find a starting date for Daniel 8:14, so he made up one. He couldn't find a starting date for the 2,520 years, so he goes looking for a date. Well, voila, he finds him a date in 2 Chronicles 33:11 that says, now this is dealing with the time of Manasseh, when he was king, and he had done so many things. You read the story, everyone's familiar with Manasseh, all the evil that he had done. But anyway, in 2 Chronicles 33:11 it says, so the Lord brought against them the army commanders of the kings of Assyria, who took Manasseh prisoner, put a hook through his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. Now then, here's where Miller began to mess up big time. And any theologian would have known this. I mean, this is freshman stuff in college here. Anyway, without giving any citation as to how he knows, Miller said that the starting date for this 2,520 years is 677 BC. Again, he gives no citation. Of course, he can't find a citation for it, and he's got to make it fit. It's like the Seventh-day Adventists do with a lot of things today. If it doesn't fit, make it fit. That's the way it goes. So anyway, he said that this captivity of Manasseh took place in 677 BC. So now he has him a starting date of 677 BC. He subtracts that from the 2,520 years, and so he arrives at 1843 for the return of Jesus Christ. What about this thing with Manasseh in 677 BC? Let me show you just how confused Miller was about this whole thing, and how anybody should have picked this out. If they even read these lectures at all, should have picked this out. Said, man, you're crazy. You don't even know what you're talking about. Miller went around giving a bunch of lectures. And in lecture 17, he says this. And he's been talking about, up to this statement I'm getting ready to read, he's been talking about the 2,520 years. And he said the proper question would be, when did these years begin? I answer, they must have begun with the first captivity of the tribe of Judea, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, in Babylon. For all the prophets agree in this thing that Babylon would be the kingdom which would carry the Jews into captivity. A few sentences later, in this same lecture, he says this. Then if Babylon was the nation with which to scatter the people of God, and this too in the days of Manasseh. I ask, when was this captivity? I answer, in the year 677 before Christ. Anybody who knows anything would know how totally ignorant this is. First of all, he is talking about the nation of Judea being taken captive here. Judea was not taken captive by the Babylonian Empire in 677 BC. The captivity of Judea by Babylon began in 605 BC, where there was a partial deportation to Babylon, and it was completed in 587 BC. Naturally, we know not to predict the return of Jesus Christ, and we know that it's wrong. But if Miller is saying that the starting date for the 2,520 years is when Judea was first taken captive by Babylon, then the year was 605 BC, not 677 BC. That's freshman Bible stuff there. I mean, that's just all there is to it. Anyway, the text in Second Chronicles only deals with the captivity of Manasseh and not the nation of Judea. In fact, if memory serves me correctly, there was some 20 other kings taken with Manasseh during this time. Now then, as I mentioned earlier, Miller does not give a citation for where he comes up with 677 BC. In Volume 3 of the History of Iniquity of Professor Max Duneker, that was written by Evelyn Abbott, who did this for Her Majesty the Queen in 1879. She is going along here talking about what we're just referring to, about this Manasseh being taken captive into Assyria, and some of these other kings as well. And she goes over several pages here talking about this. Again, this is Volume 3 of the History of Antiquity of Professor Max Duneker by Evelyn Abbott in 1879. Anyway, after talking for several pages about this, she comes to overwhelming proof that the captivity of Manasseh did not occur until after 674 BC. Now then, after giving the date of 674 BC, she mentioned right after that in fact there were some subscriptions about Esarhaddon that were found that, according to these subscriptions that were found, showed that it could not have happened before 673 BC. But either way, Miller's 677 date is totally out the picture. And you see now why he probably never did give any citations to where he got that. So both accounts, Miller was wrong, and thus his chart falls apart. When it falls apart in one part, it falls apart in the other part. According to the date in Duneker's work, Miller was off by at least 3 years, which would mean the chart had to be adjusted to at least 1846 if it was going to have any accuracy at all, which it wasn't going to have any accuracy at all to begin with, because you don't go around predicting the return of Jesus Christ. This error alone throws Miller's chart out the window. So what Ellen White has done now is to endorse a lie, follow a lie, and to promote a lie. It means that today the Seventh-day Adventists were founded on a lie and continue on a lie. False prophecy from things that did not occur. Of all the so-called scholars in the Seventh-day Adventist, not a one has the education to catch these simple errors that anyone who has anything at all about the Scriptures should know. I guess like Miller, though, they've thrown all the commentaries away and all the great work of the past and simply depend on the writings of Ellen White. Until part 3, this has been Golly saying, God bless.